Good evening, everyone. I'm going to call the Planning Commission meeting to order, the meeting for March. We'll start by saying the pledge to the allegiance of the flag.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Good evening once again and welcome. We'll next have the approval of the minutes from the February 28th meeting. Does anybody have any comments or questions about those minutes? If not, do we hear a motion to approve?
I motion to approve the minutes of February 28th, 2022.
A second?
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second to approve the minutes of February 28th. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The minutes are approved for February. So we now have a period of public comment. Is there anyone here that wishes to make public comment at this time?
Are we allowed to do it after the presentations?
There is also a period of public comment during our public hearing for the zoning amendment. So we'll have another chance then, if that's what you wish to speak to. Okay. And if there's no other public comment, we'll move on to the business at hand. We don't have any old business. So our first item of new business is the zoning map amendment publication for lots C and D as shown on the final plat of section 1-Plat 1 parcels C, D, and E of Brookfield recorded in Plat Book number 58. So at this time, I'm going to we're going to start the public hearing for this item. So if there's anyone that is going to be speaking to this, whether it's the attorneys or applicant or anyone making public comment, I would like you to stand and be sworn in. Please raise your right hand. You solemnly swear or affirm under the penalties of perjury that the response given and statements made by you in these proceedings will be the whole truth and nothing but the truth. If so, state I do.
I do.
Thank you. So at this point, we'll have a presentation by staff.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. The purpose of this application is to rezone lots C and D on Timber Mill Run from neighborhood commercial B1 to low density residential R1 in order to construct 10 single family dwellings. This public hearing was advertised in the Frederick News Post on March 19th, 2022, and the properties were posted on February 11th, 2022. The mayor and staff support the application. I'm just going to give a brief presentation of staff's comments, and then I'll leave the actual larger presentation to the applicant. So this task before the Planning Commission is to determine whether change in the character of the neighborhood or a legal mistake support a recommendation for the rezoning of the applicant's property. In evaluating a request for rezoning from the comprehensive plan, in this case adopted in 2015, the applicant bears the burden of establishing a change or mistake. The comprehensive plan is presumed correct. Anne Arundel County versus APAC LTD. Even if a mistake was made, the legislative body may grant the reclassification, but is not required to do so. This is Chesapeake Ranch Club versus Fulcher. The amount of profit one can achieve from one type of rezoning over another does not support the determination for change or mistake exists. This is under Stone. So A, change in neighborhood. To establish change in neighborhood, the board must first define the neighborhood and examine what has occurred in the neighborhood since the comprehensive plan rezoning. It must then consider whether these changes resulted in change in the character of the neighborhood. The fact that development has occurred on land consistent with its current zoning does not constitute change here, although different zoning designations appear to have existed previously based on certain zoning maps from those currently depicted. Staff has been unable to locate any ordinances documenting rezoning from parcels within the neighborhood defined by the applicant. Originally, the colors used on the maps for business designation and residential were very similar. It is also believed by staff that the rezoning in Pembroke, where a current non-conforming use is located, was erroneously designated as commercial based on that non-conforming use. Likewise, the subsequent development of residential property zone residential does not constitute change as noted above. Given the lack of written documentation supporting the rezonings of properties in the area, staff believes that none has occurred. And B, for legal mistake, to find a mistake, the applicant must first prove the conditions that made the zoning incorrect, and to determine if the board failed to consider those conditions. Let's see here. In Road versus County Board of Appeals for Baltimore County, the court noted that it may not be necessary to resolve whether a change or mistake occurred where the testimony demonstrated that either a result lack of anticipation of trends of development at the time of the last comprehensive rezoning, or as a result of changes in the trends which have occurred since then, whether anticipated or not. The existing zoning is an error at the time of the rezoning hearing. In Jabbar versus Rogers Forge Community Association, the court upheld a piecemeal rezoning and considered the failure to consider similar development trends in connection with the comprehensive rezoning. The court affirmed a finding of legal mistake, citing in part the failure to take into account at the time the proper comprehensive rezoning, the need for additional apartments, and the failure to properly consider the potential development of a surrounding property. So here, there's no evidence of any factual findings made by the board at the time of the comprehensive rezonings as to this particular property, nor is there any discussions of trends or other factors on which they may have relied. The board was stated that retail would be beneficial for the surrounding residentially zoned property, but any analysis relating to the viability of such zoning is not apparent. At this time, there's already a small retail convenience store in the area, and the viability of additional retail B1 zoning is doubtful, given the fact that substantial commercial developments has occurred less than a mile away from the subject site, and the impact of that development does not appear to have been considered or even foreseen by the planners at the time of the comprehensive plan rezoning and adoption of the most recent map. The total population of Emmitsburg in the 2010 census was noted as 2,814 residents. In 2020, it is reported as 2,770, and I do have Exhibit A attached to your packet. The lack of population does not support the need for additional commercial retail space, particularly when the commercial development is already in close proximity to the property. There's likewise no evidence that the valuation of any of the surrounding properties would be harmed by this request for rezoning. The proposed zoning supports the addition of a small number of additional housing units, is consistent with the housing that has been and is currently being built in this neighborhood. This area of the town is largely residential. Further, this additional development would assist the town in maintaining its viability with the increase in residents. To alleviate the drop in population, the town has adequate infrastructure to support the development of this property if rezoned, and the transportation patterns would be consistent with that neighborhood. In addition, development trends demonstrate the need for additional residential housing. This is readily known given the tremendous shortage of residential units available and the lack of inventory in Frederick County and generally in Emmitsburg in particular. Under Jabbar and Road cases, either the board originally did not take these trends in development and zoning impact of surrounding areas into account, or the impact of the location of the commercial areas less than a mile away was not foreseen as affecting the viability of commercial development on these two smart parcels. And finally, the mayor and staff supports the applicant's request based on the following conclusions. One, the proposed use of the subject properties is consistent with the neighborhood. Adequate public facilities are available, and residential developments on these two parcels is consistent with the existing transportation patterns. The rezoning to residential is compatible with the current residential nature in the area. Two, the relationship of this proposed amendment to the town's comprehensive plan actually makes this more consistent with the current zoning in the area, as residential supports the commercial zoning that is less than a mile away. Three, It appears that the proposed rezoning and use of the subject properties will not cause substantial detriment to adjacent properties, nor will it materially impair the public interest. And finally, 4, it appears that the applicant meets the legal requirements set forth in Maryland state law and town code for legal mistake in that zoning and the surrounding area and population and new retail trends were not foreseeable, or if they were not evaluated in conjunction with the prior comprehensive rezoning that located commercial property less than a mile away in the small population of town, which is insufficient to support further commercial zoning. Likewise, the trends in purchasing practices have gone away from retail establishments to online purchasing. There is our suggested motion for later in the evening. I would like to note that staff is withdrawing the 3 proposed conditions, as it would be more appropriate if it's passed at the Board of Commissioners level to be added as conditions in the subdivision phase. And that's my presentation, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Zach. And now we'll have the applicant's presentation.
Is this on? Red light's on. So can you hear me?
The light's on.
The light's on. Okay, terrific. Good evening, Chairman Long, members of the Planning Commission. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Bruce Dean. I'm a land use attorney in Frederick, Maryland, with the law firm of McCurdy, Dean and Gratitor. With me tonight are my client, Richard DeMitt of RJD Development, and my partner, Lisa Gratitor, who is frankly responsible for most of our submissions to the town. And so I wanted her along to, in case I make any mistakes or forget something that she argued in our application. But as Zach said, we are here to request the rezoning of this 2.85 acres of infill located next to the Brookfield development. Actually, it's part of the Brookfield, but next to the residential portion. This infill parcel is surrounded by public infrastructure, but it has remained vacant and undeveloped, obviously, for many, many years. While in 2009, as Zach alluded, the then town's comprehensive plan did look at this property and considered it appropriate for neighborhood commercial. When you redid your comprehensive plan and did a comprehensive rezoning update in 2015, that the thoughts that went into that rezoning to neighborhood commercial were not considered, and there was no decision made as to whether it was still appropriate or not. We believe, and we have argued in our submission, that in fact, had the town looked at trends in development and looked at the property a little more closely, it would have made a different decision. And those trends are both local and national and regional. The town has, as you all know far better than I do, experienced a decent amount of commercial growth on your east side versus your west side. So that is one thing that has changed on a sort of a local level. But on a regional and national level, I have noticed or been a part of in my land use practice, we've seen a tremendous change in desire of landowners and developers from owning retail, commercial. And we have several cases now where we have clients trying to increase the residential component of those commercials or eliminate the retail altogether. And as Zach alluded, a lot of that is due to just the explosion of online purchasing, but it's been exacerbated by COVID. People have become comfortable buying things without going into stores. For a while, I was doing my grocery shopping at Giant Eagle down in Frederick, and I couldn't understand who all these people were running around with boxes until I realized they were employees of Giant Eagle buying for people, buying their groceries, and then they would just pick them up. So we have seen a real change in the way people shop, moving away from brick and mortar stores. And frankly, the only brick and mortar we see that's going on right now is convenience stores. And I just don't think that's what we want to have at the entrance to Brookfield. The other thing that COVID has done, which is interesting, is that people are now using their houses as more than just a place to sleep and eat and be with their families. It's also turned into their places of work at least partially. And the home builders I've talked to see that as a trend that is not going to go away even when the pandemic is over. People have gotten used to working from home. People are comfortable working from home. People don't want to spend $6 a gallon on gas to drive 30 miles if they can get on a Zoom or a Microsoft Teams meeting. And so residential, it's almost become more than residential. It's become residential and home office, whether you have it used to be, and Mr. Long probably remembers this, if you wanted to work from home, you had to go get a home occupation license and everything. Nobody does that. Everybody works from home. So that trend that has really exploded during COVID has also increased the demand for residential development in suburban areas like Frederick County. Folks who were raising their family in condos down in DC suddenly wanted maybe more than one bedroom because the husband and wife are both working. They need an office. And so single family housing has just really taken off. And if you look around the region, there's just not very much of it. Zach alluded to that in his staff report. But we have seen a tremendous bring down, if you want to use, for lack of a better word, of the pipeline in Frederick County. What is available is disappearing at a tremendous rate. So for all these reasons, these are trends that we're seeing, that Mr. DeMitt is seeing, and I think that the town is seeing, but that they were not looked at and were not foreseen in 2015. So for all of these reasons, we believe that the current zoning of B1 is erroneous, both in fact and in law. We did submit with our application and with a supplemental letter to Ms. Powell, the town attorney, a very extensive analysis of how this rezoning case meets all the legal requirements. And I'm not going to bore you by going through that again. Zach also presented in his staff report, and again tonight, a very thorough and thoughtful discussion of what the legal background is for change or mistake, and we think we've met it. I am going to wrap this up after Mr. DeMitt talks, but I do want him to give you the benefit of his personal experience as the owner of these properties for the last many years. And then, like I said, when he's done, I'm going to come up and do a quick wrap up and conclusion. So with that, Richard, come up.
My name is Richard DeMitt, the owner of the property that we're talking about here today for rezoning. Bought the property in 2000 and started developing the residential portion in 2003 or four, probably four. And at that time, and ever since then, I've been trying to off and on talk to retailers and different people about building some retail on the retail part of the property and the commercial area. And haven't had any luck because just no one sees enough traffic there to justify putting any businesses there. So that's why, and the market right now is very good for residential, and it seems to be a demand for that. So that's what it just feels like the right thing to do, to change it to residential. And typically people are arguing the other way around. They want to up zone to commercial, and this is considered really a down zoning, but it is a change of zone. And so that's, we think, is the best use for it, for what the public would need. And the fact the community is all, we're not putting townhouses or anything there. We're putting the same type of product that's in the community. And so we think that most of the people in there wouldn't have any issue with it. And that's why we're here trying to get it changed. Any questions?
Thank you.
Me?
Is that the conclusion of your presentation?
No, I want to wrap up.
Okay.
Okay.
If Richard's done. All right, I'll be quick. I just wanted to say that the reason Maryland has this change or mistake rule is to prevent decisions changing zoning from being undertaken lightly. If it's done through a comprehensive rezoning, that's considered a legislative act where you are supposed to consider, the town is supposed to consider, all of the relevant facts and circumstances surrounding real estate and development and land use. And typically, a comprehensive plan and comprehensive rezoning process takes a year, 2 years, sometimes more than that, depending on the municipality. But it's supposed to be a thorough investigation. But change or mistake and piecemeal rezonings do exist for cases like this one, where a factual determination can be made that the property just has the wrong zoning classification. And the town and the owner want to change that, because having vacant land in a municipality that's not a park and not HOA open space, that's just sitting there on creating no revenue for the town, no use. It's just not smart growth, and it's not what municipalities want to have. So we believe, not to argue with Zach and Leslie too much, we believe that you guys can find either that there has been a change in the character of the neighborhood or that a mistake has been made. The zoning maps have changed. Zach says no cases have been filed and there's no rezoning ordinances, but your zoning maps have changed, and 5 properties that we found on your 2015 zoning map have different zoning now in 2022. How that happened, I don't know, but it did. So we believe that those 5 rezonings do indicate a change from commercial towards residential on the west part of the town of Emmitsburg. But as far as mistake, as Zach said, there's absolutely no evidence in the town's record that any of the changes that have been going on for the last many years were ever considered. They were considered in 2009, but they weren't in 2015. So we believe that we have made a good faith effort at proving both change and mistake. And if you want to find mistake, that's great, because we agree with it, but we also believe that a finding could be made of changing the character of the neighborhood. But finally, this rezoning, if this rezoning is granted, does further the town's growth priorities in your current comprehensive plan by allowing a vacant infill property to be served with town infrastructure that would generate tax revenue and would be wholly consistent with a residential neighborhood that surrounds this property. And lastly, we believe it would be helpful to the town because it does allow more people to live here. And I think that's something that folks in the town of Emmitsburg are looking for. So with that, we do request your recommendation of approval, and either Richard or Lisa or I are here to answer any questions you might have. So thank you.
Okay, thank you. So commissioners, do you have any questions for staff or the applicants?
I have tons.
Commissioner Hagan?
First question is, I believe that you've asked for this zoning change before. What was the results and reasons before that you asked for it?
So I was not part of that case, but it is my understanding that the request was made, I believe, Zach, it was over a decade ago. Yeah, for a rezoning also to residential at that time, and it was denied.
Okay.
But that was prior to 2015. So, and I would say also that the changes that we have described, both in the town zoning and in the characteristics of retail development, have really changed. I've been doing land use law for 35 years as of September. And change happens faster and faster and faster every year that I'm doing it. But this change, where, as Richard said, it used to be changing from people wanted to get rid of the residential and go to commercial. That was a upzoning, and changing from commercial to residential be considered what we used to call a downzoning. But that is not the case anymore. Residential is absolutely the proper use for this property. If the town thought 10 or 11 or 15 years ago that retail was what they wanted over there, I mean, that was the decision was made in 2009 in your comprehensive rezoning. They thought retail wanted to be there, even though Mr. DeMitt even then knew that he was having a hard time finding anyone who wanted to be there. But now we know that, right now it's just going to be vacant if it stays commercial.
Before you do a second question, or any other commissioners have any questions?
I can wait.
Pardon me?
I can wait. It's fine.
Okay. Well, I have a question, but then I'll come back to you. So on page 2 of supplemental submission, it says, as shown on Exhibit A to this letter, the town has rezoned 5 properties within the zoning neighborhood since the adoption of 2015 zoning map.
Yep.
So what 5 properties were rezoned that are shown on Exhibit A? Can you point them out to me?
Here.
And could you define the zoning neighborhood? That's part 2 of that. Oh, well, that makes a difference. Okay. So can you show me?
The zone,
So I
the
don't have to
rezoning
search.
neighborhood is in our application. There is a map attached to the application that shows the rezoning neighborhood.
Okay,
But the 5 rezonings that we depicted on that map as shown are uh, 2 Pembroke parcels went from B1 to R1. Lot 4 Fraley's Addition went from B1 to VZ. 604 West Main Street and Lot 1A in Warthen's Way condominium went from VZ to R3. So that's 5 zoning changes on your map. And as you can see, they're all adjacent to the subject parcels. That's not it. I don't know why you guys aren't getting, you can have my copy. So that's the last one. I don't have any more.
so just as a follow-up to that, if I heard you correctly, Zach, you weren't confirming that, or did I misunderstand?
So, no, so Amy and I, we went back to at least 2008, and we could not find any ordinances, resolutions, or policies to ever officially change the zoning.
Okay,
So, well, excuse me, yeah, Leslie Powell. The other point, I think, is that, well, typically there should be an ordinance confirming the rezoning of the property
Mhm.
if you're doing it outside the cycle. But the second point is that, as I understand it, the quality of the colors in the prior maps was a little bit iffy, and they were very close. And so it was hard to discern whether it really was commercial or residential. And so that was the second issue that caused us to question whether or not these properties had in fact changed.
okay.
Pretty, to me, I'm not disagreeing with your attorney, but to me, that map says what it says. It's on its face. It shows the zoning's changed. So
Okay. Commissioner Hagan, did you have another question?
Ms. Powell, when you were reviewing the thing, did you make any recommendation letter that there was a mistake in the original plan? Or you didn't look at that?
In the original plan?
Right,
Which,
the
which original plan? The 2009?
Well, the 2015, when they reviewed it, was there any mistakes made in that plan? Or you didn't look for that?
Well, no, my analysis was as follows. We looked at what the legal criteria were for the 2 possible bases for rezoning. One is change and one is legal mistake. And legal mistake is a term of art. It doesn't mean that people were nitwits. It just means that, a legal error occurred. And it's obviously 2 very different things. And when I looked at the factors that were outlined by the applicant, it seems to me that if this commission isn't, inclined to make a recommendation to the board, that it would probably be based upon mistake. I'm not telling you what to do. It's not my job. What I'm trying to do are to provide you with the guidelines as well as the questions that you should ask yourselves in making a determination, which I've also provided to the board.
Thank you. Any other commissioners have questions for staff or the applicants? Commissioner Hagan?
Going through on your application to find the exact thing in questions. Went through and you had I think in your application, 4 elementary students, I guess it was 1 or 1.3 students from this. Did you consider the 19 additional homes that the development has just had in that, or is that additional students that'll be added?
That's additional students that would be
Okay.
added.
Did anybody consider the shape of the school or when it was last renovated, or does it need? You didn't, that wasn't something you looked at.
That's not what we look at.
Okay,
That's-
it's fine. I'm just
No, no,
asking the
I'm-
question.
No,
And that's also, let me just interject, that's also not something that's considered at this stage of the game. Adequacy of schools in terms of population numbers is considered at a later date.
And next question. You used the Frederick County public yield, and there was a lot of debate about the numbers that they use in that. Was there a reason you decided to use this rather than the nationally recommended homeowners numbers
for,
for the yield
Pupil.
per student per house?
because that is what we are required to use, is the Frederick County pupil
Okay.
yield. Because I actually work with the folks at Frederick County Public Schools a lot on this very issue. Obviously, school overcrowding it has long been a county area of major concern. And they are rigorous at tracking that and changing it quickly over, literally on a every year or two basis. So we use the numbers that they make us use
Okay.
because, and they could be favorable or not favorable.
Yeah.
I don't know. I know that
Yeah.
we have to use those
Yeah,
numbers.
perfect. You use those numbers. I have no debate.
Okay.
Any other questions? Did you have something?
Well, Mr. Chair, no, I have a few. Actually, most of my questions, for full disclosure, for those that don't know, I'm on the Board of Commissioners as the liaison to the Planning Commission. So I'll be hearing this all again next
week.
Monday.
Yep.
I have a few questions that I believe would be better suited for that evening.
Okay.
Okay,
So I'm okay right now. I don't know if anyone else had any.
okay.
No.
Mr. Hagan, you have anything else?
Nope, that's all I have for them.
Okay. I think that's all our
All right,
questions.
thank you.
And because of that, I will be abstaining this evening, so I won't be voting twice.
Okay. Thank you. So at this point, we'll have public comment. And I have two people that have signed in. First is Diane Walbrecker. And even though I've said your name, could you repeat your name? for us?
Sure. Diane Walbrecker. I reside at 535 West Main Street, Emmitsburg. Sorry, I have a frog in my throat. A couple things I want to bring up. I was the chair of the Planning and Zoning Commission when we originally did the first comprehensive plan for Emmitsburg. So I'm very familiar with the reasoning. Can you guys hear me? With the reasonings behind it, the decisions to try to make Emmitsburg more of a walkable community, and the decisions, and I brought the 2015 copy of the plan right here, but and went through it again and looked at some of the reasonings behind what we did in terms of trying to create a mixed use community so that we didn't have globs of single family homes here, globs of low income housing here, globs of retail over here. Something else that I noted that both Mr. Dean and Mr. DeMitt did was they kept calling it retail. Neighborhood commercial B1 does not have to be retail per se. And I think we need to take a new look at what commercial development can be in towns. I don't have COVID.
You want a sip of water?
Sure. I think we need to take a new look at what neighborhood commercial can be in our communities in a way that can enliven the communities and help them become more active, more integrated, and less everybody getting in a car and sitting in a traffic jam trying to get to one part of town that's got all the retail. For instance, you talk about people working from home now. There may be a case for incubators, which is a building where people could come and help them develop small businesses. It's an office space that people can use twice a week, maybe twice a month. They need a conference room where they can bring 10 or 12 people in, and they need kind of a fancy area. You don't want to take people into your home where you have your dog and your cat and the litter box smell. But an incubator could provide people with the kind of business services that they may not have at their homes. I was just talking to Kevin and Joe about the fact that my color printer doesn't always work. Well, in a business, I may need to go down and use a color printer where I can print it off myself and maybe not go and pay expensive prices of a copy center to do that for my business. Let's say I needed to run off 250 copies of something. Well, if I could go and use the services in a neighborhood commercial building, that could provide income for the town. I know they're supported by the Small Business Administration to help businesses. And since we want to encourage people to work from home and not get on our community roads, not clog up the traffic, and not use a lot of gas. I mean, I think it's important to think broader about what general commercial can be. I mean, neighborhood commercial can be other than a retail store. I mean, neighborhood commercial, you can't have a drive-through, so there's not going to be any fast food restaurants or anything in there. And what about a childcare center? We were going to have a childcare center in Emmitsburg that then got moved down to Thurmont. I would think that with the neighborhoods of Pembroke and Brookfield, that a walkable childcare center might be a very good use of the property up there. So I would just hate to cut off our ability to think more broadly about what our residents need. I know when we did our comprehensive plan, we went around, we sat outside of, actually Jubilee wasn't there then, it was another business name, but we sat outside of the grocery store and talked to people. We walked around and knocked on doors and talked to people about what it was they wanted in a community. And part of what they wanted was an integrated place where people could all work and live in the same community, not get in a car and drive to everything. So that was some of the reasoning behind why we wanted to put neighborhood commercial in various parts of the town. And I believe if we think more broadly than just retail, that we may still be able to look at that. The other thing is, even if we change it, I don't agree with this. I think we should keep it neighborhood commercial, although I don't have a vote in this anymore. But even if we don't do that, what about maybe putting in R3 instead of R1? I mean, part of the comprehensive plan originally was to create a community where you could have a diversity of housing for various age groups and socioeconomic groups. And that's important to sustain a community, because otherwise, like I said, you get pockets of people over here and their kids have to move away because their kids can't afford housing in the same neighborhood. This town of Emmitsburg grew up with the ability of people to raise their kids here, have their kids raise their kids' here, and have the ability to be that integrated, volunteer-driven community. And I just fear that we're getting away from that with these pockets of housing where we don't have the ability to meet all the housing needs in the community. So anyway, I don't think there's anything else. Oh, but I would love to see the notes from a decade ago about the reasoning on those. Oh, another thing about retail is, you know, you talk about national trends going away from retail establishments, but I think what's happening too is that there are locations where Amazon or, you know, the other big shippers like to send the items so that somebody can pick them up or hold them or look at them. So maybe that's another way of thinking about neighborhood commercial as a commercial facility that doesn't have to be like the ones that we've thought of before. So I would just encourage us to think creatively. Anyway, thank you.
Thank you, Diane. Wendy Hagan.
Hi, my name is Wendy Hagan. I live here in Brookfield. I'm not saying I speak for Brookfield, just be super clear. I'm just speaking for myself. We grew up our kids until about middle school in Frederick, Maryland. And the reason we moved to Emmitsburg was in Frederick, Maryland. I was literally surrounded by a sea of $500,000 homes that were rapidly going from 300 to 400 to 500 to 600 to $700,000, and they were being squeezed tighter together. And it got to the point where it wasn't a fun place to live. And one of the things we really loved when we moved to Emmitsburg, and one of the reasons we chose Brookfield, was that they would talk about having the commercial up front where we could have a coffee shop, where we could have a, you know, like she said, a daycare center. That would have been great for my kids. And, you know, having that kind of community feel where we could walk around town and be more integrated with the town. I like that word. And I'll give you an example. I volunteer here in Frederick, a couple different organizations, and I get out of the house and I walk down to wherever I volunteer. I've actually walked up to Jubilee. So I hear this town, you know, it's only less than a mile. But that's deceiving somewhat. And I don't mean deceiving like deceptive. I mean deceiving into thinking that she's right. If we put everything on one side of town, that town becomes, everybody goes down 15, they stop, or they're leaving. They're either leaving or going from Emmitsburg when they hit those businesses 9 times out of 10. What would be nice is to have a corridor where we have businesses on both sides of town that allow our kids, you know, my kids, when they tell you where they grew up, you know, where they're going to live, they never say Emmitsburg because there's no jobs here. And when they were in high school, they worked in Frederick. I literally drove them to Frederick to work part-time jobs because there were no jobs in Emmitsburg. And so when they talk about what their community is, they don't use the word Emmitsburg because it was just a place where we lived, but they work and went to school and everything else somewhere else. So I want to make sure that we don't cut off our nose to spite our faces. I'm not opposed to houses, Mr. DeWitt. I mean, I always like to have more neighbors, but what I really am afraid of is if we zone it and we plop up 10 more houses for a short-term gain. I get their point. They can sell it quick. They get rid of it. They make their money. They leave, or maybe they go somewhere else to development, but then we can't go back and undo it. And that side of town is gone forever. We don't have an opportunity to grow that way and have some sort of community residence and buildings that we could use. I work from home. I've worked from home for 2 years. I'm the most social person you can imagine. And working from home killed me. And I'm still there. I mean, I would much rather be at work talking to my friends. It doesn't happen. I would have loved to have had a community space or a coffee shop where I could get out of those 4 walls. And I love my husband, who, for full disclosure, is sitting right up there. But there are days after 24/7 for week after week after week, it was nice to be able to walk down and maybe get a coffee or actually have a conference room. Or there's a place down in Frederick called, I think it's Share Something, where that you actually can rent office space and do that. And I think she's right. There's a lot of options. And this is what I would recommend. If the argument is that the comprehensive plan wasn't done correctly in 2015, then why not redo it and don't rush into, we're going to just sort some houses up and wipe out that option. Why not redo the comprehensive plan and look at it again? And I can tell you for the fact that my shopping habits have changed drastically toward non-online. So I do online. I go to Frederick And I walk up and down Main Street because it is better than sitting at home 24/7. And there's a lot of restaurants and stuff. So that's all I'm going to say. So I'm not bashing anybody. I think either plan will work, right? But I would urge that once we put houses there, we're done. We don't have any option to go back and undo it. And I'm hoping that we can rethink it. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else here that would like to make public comment that hasn't signed up? Come to the podium and state your name and then sign up.
You have to be heard. I'm sorry. If you want to, for the taping, we're videotaping it. I'm not sure if you could come up and sit down. We can move the. Amy, do we have a? I'm sorry. Yeah. He does need to be sworn in too. Do we have a microphone?
Were you previously sworn in?
No, he was not.
No, I'm fine. Excuse me, I'll make this quick.
But 1 second. He has to be, we have to be sworn in.
Raise your right hand, please.
Is there anyone else that wishes to speak so we can swear you in at the same time?
Raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear or affirm under the penalties of perjury that the response given and statements made by you in these proceedings will be the whole truth and nothing but the truth? If so, state I do.
I do.
Thank you. Could I have your name and address, please?
Yes, my name is Scott, last name Frager. I live at 1449 Ramblewood Drive, Emmitsburg.
Thank you.
So I clearly heard, and let me begin this way. Commissioner Hagan brought up schools, and I'd like to leverage on that just a little bit. I appreciate the work that the Planning Commission does relative to utilities and infrastructure. But I would argue that schools are a pretty important part of our community. I heard clearly that Frederick County rigorously tracks school condition, attendance with respect to crowding. I would question whether or not in the last 5 or 10 years, if there's objective evidence that Frederick County has done anything to improve the schools in Emmitsburg. And I asked that question, admitting openly that I'm relatively new to Emmitsburg. But we see Emmitsburg, and when I say we, I'm talking about myself and my family, as a blessing. And that was after 33 years in Montgomery County. We're grateful to be here. Schools are important, and I think I'm preaching to the choir. I don't know if this is the right forum to bring it up, but I ask respectfully that an analysis be done with respect to the condition of the schools in Emmitsburg and the crowding conditions here in Emmitsburg. And I understand clearly that's the responsibility of Frederick County. But I can't help but believe it's also the responsibility of the citizens of Emmitsburg.
Thank you, sir. Any other public comment? If not, the public comment period is now closed. And it's time for the commissioners to deliberate.
Chairman, they wish to rebut, do
Sorry.
rebuttal.
Oh.
Excuse me, there should, yeah.
I'm sorry. Good. Would you like to rebut?
I would like to just say a few words. First of all, I'm getting my hip replaced in 2 weeks, so I'm fully sympathetic. I was going to lend you my cane, but Anyway, Bruce Dean again for the applicant. A couple things I just wanted to say, and I apologize if I implied that retail was the only potential use under neighborhood commercial. Obviously, it's not. But Mr. DeMitt has explored, I don't remember exactly how many years Richard's owned these parcels, but he's explored every option under the sun for a user for that. Daycare, coffee shop, he tells me, offices, all of those things. And frankly, you have to explore those other options because there's not a lot of visibility of these parcels. You know, they're not like right there on 15 or you know, on the corner there where there's a ton of traffic that's going to see what's there. So you have to have some sort of destination use if it's not going to be residential. And for all those years, he just has not found a user or anyone who wants to buy those properties. And so it's not like he didn't do his homework. He is doing this because that's what those properties want to be. I wanted to put that on the record. If you'd rather hear it from his mouth than mine, that's fine, but that's what he told me. So the other thing I just wanted to mention, again, I have sent 4 children through Frederick County Public Schools. No one is as big a champion of Frederick County Public Schools as I am, or I'm not going to take a back seat to anyone. I sent all 4 of them to good schools based on the education they got here in Frederick County. And I will tell you, school overcrowding is why our county executive got into politics. It's why, I can't tell you how many people was their primary focus of why they got involved in the political process. And I will tell you right now, the only school system, the only feeder system in Frederick that is under capacity is the Catoctin High School feeder district. So you want, I'm not going to disagree with the comment about it's getting crowded in Frederick City. That's where I live. Frederick High School went from being drastically underutilized to being close to capacity now. Thomas Johnson, same thing. I mean, there's all the school, and then if you go to Urbana or Linganore or Middletown, you know, those high schools are completely full. Catoctin High School is at like 70% capacity. Schools need kids, and kids need families with a place to live. And we are not, this proposal for 10 houses is, I mean, it's just not going to overcrowd the schools. And the numbers we used, even if you doubled them or tripled them, and that wouldn't make sense, but if you did, you'd still would not come anywhere near the capacity levels of the elementary, middle, or high school serving these houses. So I just wanted that on the record that we do take in the development industry, the schools very seriously. It's the first question people ask when they want to buy a house is, what schools serve this place? Are they good? Is there room for my kid? And if there isn't, is it such a good school that I don't care, which is what you get in Urbana, because they are great schools. But here, you know, these are great schools, but they actually have room for kids. And the staff report even said that the population of the town has shrunk. I think that's interesting. And what I noticed from reading the data was that it's the population of each home is shrinking. That means that you're having happen in those homes what's happened in my house, which is my 4 kids have all grown up and moved out, yet my wife and I are still there. So we went from 6 people in a house to 2. That's what it means when the population in a per house is shrinking. But the fact is, people do need a place to live. I take what I do very passionately. You know, food, clothing, and shelter are the 3 uses that everyone needs. And we happen to think that this is a terrific use for this property. And we agree with every comment about Emmitsburg. It is a blessing. It is a wonderful place for people to raise their families. And we want to have 10 more have the opportunity to do so. So thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we are open for deliberations. I'll start off by making a few comments. I appreciate the public comments that were made. I certainly appreciate a walkable town, and I live on the west end of town. I don't live in Brookfield, but I live near there. And I would love it if there was a coffee shop there. I walk over to the convenience store that's there on Sunday morning to get my Washington Post because it's not delivered anymore, but they don't sell the Washington Post. So I do have to make the trip to the other end of town to get my paper. I would love it if there were more amenities there. And I would assume, I don't have young children, but I would assume that the folks of Brookfield would love a daycare center. But it's tough doing daycare these days and starting a daycare center. The childcare system has been decimated. It was very fragile before COVID hit, and now it's been decimated. And for someone to start a daycare at this point would be very problematic, I think. And I do appreciate the effort that Mr. DeMitt has made the past 20 some odd years to bring in something else there, some kind of commercial entity. And I understand that you have looked at different things and it hasn't happened. And we all would like to think it could happen, that we would have something there, but but us wishing that to happen doesn't make it happen. I mean, someone has to put up the money and buy the property and develop the enterprises. So I kind of understand the dilemma that Mr. DeMitt's in. But I also appreciate the comment that Diane made. I serve on the Frederick County Affordable Housing Council, and I know that we need more housing. We need more affordable housing. I wouldn't have been opposed to having more density in that area, quite frankly, to have it R3 and have more diverse housing. But that's not what the applicant's asking for. So I can't change what he's asking for. I don't know that we've met the legal criteria for a change of neighborhood, because as far as I can see, that area, Brookfield, has been residential for some time. It's been planned to be residential for some time, but I do seem to feel that perhaps the commissioners that, you know, in the past did not foresee the trends that were developing and the implications of what happened when more commercial development was planned for the east end of town. So I think there is justification for the zoning change, just because the trend wasn't foreseen and a mistake was made in that way. So that's where I'm leaning. Like I say, we do need more housing. I mean, there's a housing shortage. I see it every day. I work in that profession. Again, I would have probably liked to see more diverse housing and not the larger houses that are already in Brookfield, but that's not for me to say. So that's my initial comment.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, sir.
I have a question I want to ask of staff now, because if I don't ask it now, I'm going to forget, but then I
Well,
just have
we've had our questioning period, but
okay, this is just a question regarding the procedure tonight. Obviously, we're voting this evening. So no matter what the outcome of tonight is, we're still having a public hearing next week.
That's correct.
And the Board of Commissioners will be voting on the matter.
That's correct.
Okay. Deliberation wise, Mr. Chair, I was looking at the not so much the legal mistake, but the finding of fact.
Mhm.
And I was going to comment on the first thing I was going to comment on was the population. And Mr. Dean brings up a good point, you know, kids moving away, a slight population decrease that way. I think the majority of population in town was the Daughters of Charity, actually, right across the street as they moved their province from here to St. Louis. So that showed a slight decrease in population there. I'd also like to touch on the adequate public facilities. I know we talked about schools and that there's still some room at Emmitsburg Elementary, although it's getting close to the threshold at full capacity. But I know we're also looking now at the infrastructure in town, water and sewer issues that we have. I think we need to take that into consideration, not only with the proposal for this evening, but going forward as well. My records show that the intent to change the zoning from from commercial to residential actually occurred approximately 20 years ago. Is when it first started. At that time, the argument was, hey, there's no commercial on this side of town. It's all on the east side. It'd be nice to have some commercial on the west. And now we're faced with that same dilemma. Hey, we have all the commercial on the east side of town. Let's keep it that way. We really don't need any on the west. And I'm a little concerned about the online purchasing comment. I know COVID kind of put a dent in how things work, but if we're going to look at it with that lens that, hey, online purchasing is the wave of the future, brick and mortar might not be necessary. Do we really want to look at it that way when it comes to promoting new business in town and encouraging new business to open up here in town? To me, sort of seems hypocritical to that approach. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Hagan?
Just for open, I live in Brookfield, so I don't want anybody thinking that, I do live in Brookfield. And years ago, Mr. DeMint, before the first house was bought in Brookfield, had a concept of a strip kind of mall with apartments above it. That's well before the first house was built. I love that idea. I think that's incredible. And before he built the first house, that idea went away. So it wasn't like he applied for it or did anything. It was just rough thinking. And I love that rough thinking idea. Here's the businesses. The type of businesses we're looking at don't build buildings. We're talking about mom and pop shops, people that use their 401ks to start a business. They can't build the infrastructure. So what we need is somebody to build the infrastructure. And I think the businesses will come. A comic book shop, daycare center. That's the problem that we have. Not that the businesses won't come. The type of businesses we want can't afford to be there. So we have to ask that question. I think the comprehensive plan didn't change. The whole neighborhood of Brookfield and Pembroke came out as was designed. The number of houses, the street system, the water and sewer, it was all planned that way. It's now reaching the finish with the houses being built on Irish Town Road. The development will be done as designed. That leaves this space up there that the original, as Ms. Walbrick stated, the town wanted businesses there. I wasn't part of those deliberations. I don't know what they wanted, but when I hear that hours and hours of citizens interview occurred and said, what if we had do this? What if we do that? I don't think a mistake was made in the comprehensive plan. I think that group spent incredible hours and said, this is what they wanted Emmitsburg to be. And they saw businesses on both sides of the town. And then we go back to adequate public facilities. 92% is what the schools are at currently. We're talking about 1 to 2 students from these 10 houses. I think it's another 2 coming from the 19 houses were just built that don't show on any of this. So we're talking, say, 4 students. Let's up it to 4. It gets us also close to capacity. that school hasn't had renovations in years. If you, any parent there, that's the first complaint I hear from every parent is it's an open fielded school. It's an open source school. Now, I went to one of those elementary schools. It's outdated now. There's better teaching methods, and the county's not going to give us anything. As I've heard repeatedly from our town commissioners, the money's not coming. The Board of Education's not going to do it. It is what it is. So we're stuck with a school that is technically under, the student guideline. It's not at max, but it's getting close. It's in poor conditions. We have teachers now teaching combined grades. They're teaching 3rd and 4th grades simultaneously. That I don't know as a parent that enjoys that. And it would be great if we had the principal or the vice principal or somebody from the school system here to say, this is what we want. Oh, no, we want 500 extra students would make our life great. We can get money per student, which they do, by the way. The count is per student is where the funding comes from. We could hear that. We did not. I don't think it meets the adequate thing, and it's a big concern for me. I think it materially changes the town's plan. Nobody here was on the commission for the town's comprehensive plan. But all I hear is hours and hours of talk went in, interviews with citizens, and books and reams of data is available if we want it. I don't think anything's changed. It's working as planned. I have concerns that we have changes apparently in zoning that the town says doesn't exist. That bothers me greatly, that we have these ghost changes going on that the town can't validate, but people searching records did. Good job in searching that out. I appreciate people finding that and bringing it forward and say, hey, we see this. And then I have the town saying, no, that doesn't exist. So it's, who do we believe? The town or the applicant?
So you're making the applicant's case,
Well, I argue you have to see both sides. Everybody up here has to be fair. They can't come in prejudiced. The applicant made good points. I'm not going to deny that and say, oh, no, they came in and say, oh, there was a complete fabrication, the town. I don't know. But I think we have to take that in consideration. If town records don't show this, how is it occurring? Or is it just to help us get to the sale point? A big line that struck me like thunder was, we can turn this around quickly and houses can be sold quickly by the applicant. That hurt me greatly. Whether you want houses or not, they're doing this because they can make a quick buck. I don't blame them. That's their job. Well, no, building houses now is a prime market. I don't deny them. I guarantee if they built those houses, they could build them quick and make the money. No ifs, ands, or buts. The houses would sell. And it wouldn't be 20 years. My guess is it wouldn't even be 3 months. And those houses would be sold.
about a week.
It's fast. So as far as the comprehensive plan, I'm going to go back to that. How many $500,000 houses does Emmitsburg need? I live in that community. I like big houses and their prices going up because it makes my value go up. I'm not going to deny that. But we have to think as a board, what's good for Emmitsburg, not what's good for Kevin, that his house value will go up and everything by this. Does the town need that? If the town needs businesses, or some of the businesses Ms. Walbrook designed, or not designed, but mentioned, or do we need higher density, mixed value housing? It's how much value can these, and I think everybody needs to consider that of what's going on. I know we all have a checklist of yes or no, what needed to be done, what didn't need to be done, and what criteria need to be met. And I'm fine on all the legal, but I come back to schools and is it good for the town? Do we need to change the comprehensive plan? And those are the questions people need to think about.
Thank you. Ladies? Go ahead.
After hearing everybody speak, I'm very much on the fence because I live in Southgate, which those plots have been empty now we have 5 that are still left, I believe, since 4. Well, that's good. We're making progress. But I don't know how long the neighborhood's been there because I came midway. So I don't know if it's been there since 2003, 2004, 2005-ish, so a little later than that. So I'd love to see those get scooped up first before we go approving any other houses. But I do agree. Full disclosure, I am a public school teacher. I work for Frederick County Public Schools. My son did go to Emmitsburg Elementary. I saw the condition of the school, and I do agree that changes to that school are not coming anytime soon. But at the same time, I see it as a catch-22 because in order to get changes to the school, you need to have your school so overcapacitated before anybody even considers it. So it's like, do you want to overcapacitate your schools? Well, no, because I've been in that situation. I worked at Spring Ridge where we had 15 portables outside. It is not fun. But also you have to bring in the residents in order to get the businesses. So there's this catch-22, but do you tax the schools? Do you want the businesses? But I do know that the comprehensive plan has a lot of planning of residents of areas that have not been built yet, that is slated for that purpose, if I'm not mistaken. And I do hear what the residents are saying it would be nice to have more community-based things here to do, some kind of community center or anything to do besides walking the hiking path and walking to ice cream. It would be nice to have something else to do to come together as a community. So, and likewise, my son went to Emmitsburg in it was an open school. And I know that back in the day, the philosophy of an open school was the buzz of learning. If you hear everybody talking and hear everybody learning, it's going to motivate you to want to learn more, which they have since determined like a year after that was implemented. That was a really bad idea. It's just a nightmare for teachers and students to try to concentrate. In the very least, I would like to see walls go up in that school and security measures go up in that school. I think that's a whole nother topic in and of itself. So I am kind of on the fence. I'm still kind of mulling it over in my head, and I'm interested to hear other perspectives.
May I speak?
Yes, Commissioner.
Okay. I'm very much on the fence as well. However, what stands in my mind is I don't want to see more of the same. And that's what I hear everything, the arguments on both sides are very valuable. But what for me personally, I think it's going to come down to just having more of the same. I think we need something different to spice things up a bit and to add more of something else besides single family homes that's affordable.
Thank you. So I'll follow up a little bit, just segueing on what Amy was saying. But it is kind of a catch-22 it may be very, I haven't been inside the school here in Emmitsburg, but I can see the outside, and I'm a home inspector. I can kind of read buildings a bit. So I kind of assume it needs some tender loving care inside. But like Amy was saying, unless we're busting at the seams, it's not likely that this would be a priority. And that's the sad reality. I mean, all the development in Frederick County has been occurring in the southern part of the county and around Frederick City. Those schools have become overcrowded, and that's where the money goes. And that's just the reality. And I'm not saying we should grow Emmitsburg to the point where we're bursting just to get the school fixed, but that's the sad reality, is that's the way things happen. So, you know, the condition of the school, I don't know that that really weighs into it, and we can only take the data that we have, that it's under capacity. So I don't know that that's, you know, in my mind, that's not a big concern. As far as the capacity of roads, I don't see the additional housing impacting that to any great extent. You know, if we put some businesses in there and people were driving to those businesses, it would have about the same impact, more than likely. But even if it didn't, a few additional houses is not going to impact that roadway or Main Street that I can see. And I do appreciate all the time that was put into the last comprehensive plan and all the questioning that must have gone on. And, you know, I understand the desires of folks to want something different in that area. But again, unless somebody's putting up the money to build something else there, you know, the land may just sit vacant like it has been the past 20 years for the foreseeable future. But, you know, if somebody has some other options, I'm all ears.
Let me,
Go ahead.
I think, as you said, the roads are there. The roads were designed for the capacity that is there. No ifs, ands, or buts. The water taps are there.
Yeah.
No ifs, ands, or buts. Your questions about capacity of school, most definitely, we can argue as if a parent that's been in that school and says, hey, it needs help. That's fact. People can look at the school and say, now that these numbers will not put them over. And I agree, it's not going to put them over the status it needs. Now, we can make an argument, well, we're not going to get money. And we aren't going to get money until we scream. They're now rebuilding a school that was farther under population than Emmitsburg currently, because the parents were up in arms and we're going to vote. Doesn't matter if you're busting at the seams. I think that's a fallacy. I served on a state PTA for a number of years as the capital liaison. So I went back and forth to Annapolis to all the hearings and had to testify in Kent for the state PTA. I can tell you how hard it is to get funding, and I can tell you the ways to get funding. If you look at the chairman of our county council joined because she argued about a school, and that's how she got it. You know, most of that council is there because they argued at school to say, we don't have the facts. All we have is it's underpopulation. We can't consider anything else. I think that's a fallacy. As citizens and parents of this community, we know how many portables are there. We know what the walls are like. If you have students there, you know what the teachers are saying. And I agree, more students, more money. It's per student head. No ifs, ands, or buts. But we can definitely take that in consideration as a board. We can also take in, does it materially change the comprehensive plan? It's a question everybody has to answer. If it doesn't change the comprehensive, if the comprehensive plan said there's going to be this number of houses in Brookfield, this number of houses in Pembroke, this many houses on Main Street, this many businesses on Main Street, and this is what we want to grow down here. It's not here now, hasn't been there, they have trouble for 20 years. But has the comprehensive plan changed? What in Emmitsburg has changed from the comprehensive plan? And that's an individual question that everybody has to answer. That the plan drew up and said, this is what we want. Hasn't been there. And if I own that land, I'd be upset. I mean, I'm not going to deny that fact, but I also can't say where the comprehensive plan went wrong. What we're saying is, okay, let's change the comprehensive plan because it's a hot housing market. That's what it boils down to. We want to take advantage of the housing market. And if I own that land, I'd certainly do it. That's what I'd be doing. I don't hold a grudge against them for wanting it, but it doesn't change the comprehensive plan. You got to tell me where the comprehensive plan went wrong. If you're saying, oh, we didn't count on people staying home, that doesn't matter. That's inconsequential. The only thing the comprehensive plan counted on, how many people were in that house, how many sleep, and where they may go to get their groceries, and where they may shop, and where their children go to school. It doesn't matter if they order on Amazon. It doesn't matter if they do their job, you know, on Zoom. And I'm one of them. I work from home most of the time until I have to go into the hospital and do a little tour to make people happy. So I know how the environment is. Will it change? Nobody knows. But I know people like working at home. And I know because people are working at home, may see a change and a drive for that business. Now that they're working from home, hey, I never thought of the idea of that conference room. I could get some of my Zoom meetings and call people in town and say, my employees need to meet here rather than go somewhere. It'd be great. I never thought of that idea and everything. But I think we need to think that as the population may change and they're working from home, would that drive it that now they want something that they can walk down to and just to get out? May that make it a viable, you know, retail space? I don't know, but I'm thinking that change would be there. I know a lot of people have looked at different businesses in town and are pulling financials and looking at things and trying to decide, do they invest now? Do they not? But that property is meant for mom and pop shops in my mind. And those are the people that yank their 401ks out to start their business and roll the dice. Same as our guy that opened a comic book shop, friend of mine, roll with the dice. He goes, I have a basement full of comic books. My wife is going to kill me. What can I do? He took all of his earnings, invested in a comic book shop. And I love that he's doing great. Our guy at the tattoo shop was the same thing. He invested his wife's money and rolled the dice. This is how small businesses work. Small businesses don't build buildings. I'm sorry. It just, if you can show me data that says the majority of small mom and pop businesses built their own brick walls, I'd be happy to see it, but I've never seen it once. Our problem is we got looking for the wrong investors. And I think the economy is changing, that those investors might be out there. I think everybody has to consider that in their own mind. 20 years is a long time. Will it change? Everybody up here has to make that decision themselves. You know, if they think, hey, the economy's changing, now's the time for something. I mean, if you would have told me 5 years ago a tattoo shop would thrive in the center of the city, I would have laughed you out of town. And he's doing great. I talked to him regularly. He is doing fantastic. That shop he went COVID and wasn't there for what, 4 months, and his staff ran it. You would have told me when that coffee shop was going to turn into a tattoo shop, it'd be going gangbusters. So I said, it laughed you out of town. You'd be surprised what businesses, when given the opportunity, can thrive. Emmitsburg is a nice place and I need to sell it. And I know over and over, our goal has been more housing, more housing, more housing. We need more heads. That's how we get everything. The commissioners have railed that into my head repeatedly when I talk to them. We have a lot still on the books, and I don't think 10 is worth breaking our comprehensive plan for. But everybody's got to decide that.
True. Thank you. Any other comments? by anybody? Any other thoughts? So I was hearing that two of the commissioners are on the fence. And I'm hearing from Commissioner Hagan,
Just,
probably not on the fence.
just to be clear, I'm not on the fence. I know one, but on the recommendation of staff, since I live in Brookfield and I'm within a mile of this, and I've known for a year about this plan, that ethics charges we filed if I vote. So I'm not voting because they're threatening ethics charges.
Okay. So, is anybody ready to entertain a motion?
Mr. President, this would be to end the public hearing.
I'm sorry. Lost track of where I was. So we will end the public hearing at this point. Actually, I need a motion to end the public hearing.
I'll make a motion that we end the public hearing at this time.
I second the motion.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed to ending the hearing? So the hearing is closed. So we have the option to make a motion at this point on the applicant's request. And it looks like we have two abstentions. We, if no one makes a motion, we don't vote. I could make a motion, but I'm,
That would be highly irregular and Robert's rules would rule against it.
what? Thank you. No, but I'm sensing that you two aren't really sure where you're at.
I understand making the motion. I don't know
Terry,
why.
there, here.
Do I need to express how I'm gonna vote when I make the motion? No,
No.
okay.
All right, so here's the program. All right, so you should consider whether the applicant has established change or mistake first in certain findings of fact, if you will, and then you make a motion with respect to those findings, what they support. And you can either, make a motion to recommend, because this is an advisory vote, okay? So you can make a motion to the Board of Commissioners that you recommend that the rezoning request be granted because of the findings of fact that you made. You can make a motion or make a recommendation to the commissioners that you're not going to recommend it. Or because this is just a very festive occasion, you can make all the findings of fact in favor of a rezoning, but still not make a recommendation, which is a little different, but it is certainly, it's the law. So it's unlike a subdivision process where if they meet all the criteria, you have to grant it. So that's basically what you should do. So you should consider the factors that go to each of the two criteria, the facts, make findings on those. And then, as I said, you can make a motion at the end of making the findings. I think that's probably the most efficient way to do it.
I'm not sure of how to go about it. When I was going to make a motion and just read the agenda item.
Sure, if you want, if you'd like to make a motion and read the agenda item, that's fine. And then you can read or basically address the findings of fact afterward. It's up to you, but you should make some findings to support your decision.
There is a suggested motion in the packet,
Where did that go?
if that helps.
I think it's on the last, isn't it on the last?
Page 6.
Yeah.
I could provide you my,
Thank you.
oh, you got it. Okay. I lost my sheet.
Amy?
If you're comfortable doing that. It- If you're going to speak, turn on your mic.
Speaking in my head.
And me as well.
I'm sorry.
Me as well.
So do you want to talk about any of the statements of fact before? Do you want to go through any of those before making a motion? Would that make you more comfortable or?
It would.
Okay. So we've talked about schools. We talked a little bit about roads. It doesn't seem like it's going to have an impact on roads. Does it seem like the rezoning request is compatible with the existing and planned development in that area? I would say so. I mean, they're planning to do what is already there.
This is for 10 single-family homes. Is that 10?
Well, if I understand that the 2 parcels will have 7 homes, and then there's 1 parcel where it's already R1 that have a three homes, so there's a total of 10 then.
Oh, okay.
But the rezoning really applies to 7, if I understand correctly. So does the applicants request further other projects that are being developed in conformance with the comprehensive plan? So the fact that they're asking to change the zoning, I would say that it doesn't concur with the comprehensive plan, but their argument is that either a mistake was made or the neighborhood changed. I think an argument can be made that a mistake was made in the sense that some trends weren't anticipated in, how commercial projects would develop.
I move to find that the applicant has demonstrated legal mistake on the testimony and other evidence presented to the commission. The planning commission recommends to the board that the request for approval of the zoning map amendment application for lots C and D as shown on the final plat of section 1, plat 1, parcels C, D, and E for Brookfield recorded in plat book number 58, page 40, as noted in the applicant's zoning map amendment application dated January 10th, 2022, be granted with the following conditions
No conditions.
No condition.
without the conditions recommended by staff.
Thank you, Terry. We have a motion. Do we have a second? If we don't have a second, then the motion dies.
You can second it.
I can second.
Mhm.
You should have told me this.
You can't. And I'll argue it to the appeals commission.
If
So
Robert's Rules of Order, if it's already known that a member is abstaining, can that member second?
now that's a fine question.
Yeah.
But let me say first, you actually don't follow Robert's Rules of Order. People may aspire to that, but
I know we don't.
But
Yeah.
but you don't. And so that's a place that we don't need to go. I think that because you've abstained, you've kind of made a choice, if you will. But I would also say that I'm not aware of anything that prevents the chairperson of the commission from seconding or in fact voting, because he is a voting member of your board. And you could, to not allow him to second a motion, then kind of prohibits his ability to move forward and vote, and that would be wrong. So.
I second. So we have a motion and a second to find the applicant has demonstrated legal mistake based on the testimony, et cetera, as Terry has already stated.
And you're recommending approval of the application if I'm
that's what
Correct.
the motion was.
sure.
So all in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstains? Abstentions?
I abstain.
I abstain.
We have
Well, I
three
was forced to
abstentions.
abstain.
We have 3 abstentions.
No, wait a minute. I'm sorry. Ms. Pollitt, what's
I'm
the
abstaining.
basis for your abstention?
I can't make a decision.
Okay, so I don't even know. if
I see a case for it both ways. I honestly
don't-
do.
As do I. My vote went towards the fact that I do feel like they've made proof of the things that they needed to prove. And I personally, I would have to leave it to the Board of Commissioners to make a decision on what they believe to be best for the town. But I mean, as far as what they've needed to prove, I can see they did make their case.
Ms. Powell,
Oh, but you don't have permission to speak.
that's true. Chair, may I speak?
Yes.
Ms. Powell,
Yes, sir.
according to the rules, can a commissioner say they they've proven the facts that they set forward and still vote no?
Yes, in this circumstances, that is a possibility,
Thank
because
you.
this is a different type of hearing.
Right. Thank you.
I'm gonna vote nay, just because I,
2-1.
So we have 2 ayes, 1 nay, and 2 abstentions then, correct?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
So the motion fails, correct?
Motion passes.
The motion passes.
Because we aren't counting the 2 abstentions.
That's right.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, you've got a quorum.
Okay. Okay. Thank you, I guess.
Pass. Okay, thank you, everybody.
Thank you very much.
And as soon as I straighten up my desk, we'll move on to the next piece of business. Thank you, everyone. Excuse me, we're still in the middle of a meeting. Just with that business.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Our next item of business is the Federal Stone Site Plan. And Zach,
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I won't rehash everything from the Forest Conservation Plan and also the final subdivision plan, but welcome, Federal Stone. All right, so One question that we didn't have answered, I believe David and Brandon can probably speak to it if you'd like. Would you like to speak first? I know you wanted to say a couple things. Sure. I mean, if Mr. President, if that's okay.
Sure.
Good evening. I'm David Rathmeyer. My son Brandon is coming. Wanted to do a real quick introduction of what it is that we do. And I think Zach is probably going to explain a fair amount of stuff better than I will be able to. But first, I wanted to, I guess, apologize to Zach and certainly to the board. There's going to be a stopping, so to speak, of the progress. We've lost our civil engineer. So those of you that are in business realize that he's a major input to the business. And there's been a lot of, I guess, paperwork and involvement with the Frederick County. And we've been fast tracked thanks to Zach. And in doing such, our civil engineer got, I guess, cold feet, heart palpitations or whatever, and said he can't keep up with that kind of ping pong back and forth. So he elected to bail on us. So with that, we're in the process of entertaining, I guess, applicants. We've talked to several. And again, I wanted to, apologize to Zach and the board for that, because we don't do this. This is what we do. And when you're talking about brick and mortar, I'm getting ready to put $6 million into brick and mortar. So thank you very much. So stop. We do Ma and Pa's and sons and daughter-in-laws do spend money out of our 401k profit sharing and the SBA, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So what I'd like to show, this is a kind of a rendering that Brandon and some of our 401k money has spent just to be able to prove this is what's hopefully coming to a neighborhood near you. So we wanted to hold this off until we were able to get a little further down the road. But because of the derailment, which is temporary, because again, you're right, the small businessman kind of works without a net, and we will survive and we will get this thing built. It's just going to be hopefully starting maybe in August, September, as opposed to June, July, if everything continues to move on. Like I say, we've got a lot of comments that need to be addressed. And again, I apologize for that. I was expecting when you have, I have BS after my name, when you have engineering and architects and landscape engineers and on and on and on, the payroll that we're putting out to try to get this thing under roof is massive. And when they give Zach, who's just been working tireless with us for how many years now? It's 3. Yeah. And when they don't do their job, it kind of really, you get twisted. And so the 70 some comments are a lot, and a lot of those comments were comments that should have been rectified early on. Zach's done the lion's share of work, gives the information to the civil, and all you really got to do is cut and paste. And when you can't do that, then I think Brandon and I were kind of reading the writing on the wall. I'm sure Zach was reading the writing on the wall as well. So it's one of those things that we didn't want to call the ball because we knew the hiccup that was going to be coming, and it meant we're going to be losing 2 or 3 months out of the project. But it's springtime in the pool business. Mr. Long, you're well aware of that. We're all trying to race to Memorial Day. We all want a swimming pool in our backyard. We want the country clubs open, we want the YMCA's open, everything else. So maybe it was a godsend. I don't know, because right now, that little white stone is what's carrying a lot of weight in our 25 guys. And that's really what we need to focus there in being able to do that and get my shoulder back together. So thank you very much. So Zach, you do your thing, and you got questions, I'm your guy. If I can't answer it, Brandon can.
Okay.
We're going to move. We'll just sit right here. We'll be right here.
That's a great concept.
All right.
Concept design. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So, Mr. President, as David stated, there are a vast amount of comments. I'm sure you don't want me to read through all these. I spoke with their civil engineer and he will get it rectified. Since there's no rush right now on the improvement plan, we are recommending that we table this this evening. I don't think we're going to be able to get, that sounds like from speaking with your civil engineer, we're not going to be able to get it on the next meeting agenda. However, hopefully we can get it in 2 months. So you're going to have a month off next month. So enjoy it. But this is a great concept. I love working with these guys. These are great. They're going to be great to the community. And if there's any questions, we're here to answer.
So in your staff report, there were 3 items that before getting to the part where we were going to table the site plan,
Yes.
Did you want to go over them or just wait till?
Sure,
it all
yeah.
comes-
Let's go ahead and, if you don't mind, get these either approved or denied this evening so we can give these guys a little bit of direction on how they're going to clean up their plan. So for the modification request, the number 1, the planning commission may allow open section roads and industrial zone properties without the need for sidewalk, curb and gutter in accordance with town code 161630W. So a modification to allow open section roads without sidewalk, curb and gutter. Without this modification, they would be required to add sidewalk, curb and gutter along the property abutting Creamery Court on combines lots 7 and 8 only. Due to the location of the Emmitsburg East Industrial Park 2, staff understands the reasoning for not wanting to install sidewalk, curb and gutter. It is highly unlikely that Federal Stone staff or visitors will walk to the facility, especially being on the east side of US 15. Staff also understands that the Emmitsburg East Industrial Park 1 on Creamery Road does not have sidewalk, curb and gutter. Staff can support this request. However, industrial parks with sidewalk, curb and gutter do have a nice visual appeal. Would you like me to go through all of them or? Mr. Chairman?
Sure.
So the reason that we're asking, I guess, through all of that, the reason we're asking not to put curb and gutter, Frederick County has a 20,000 square foot rain catch, if you will. And this is something that, again, caused Mike a little bit of heartburn, that we're putting up a 40,000 square foot building. So they say that for every 20,000 square feet of impervious ground, area that has to now be maintained, that water now has to go to a special catch basin. And then the next 20 has to go to a special catch basin. And the next 20, I could end up with 100 special little catch basins if we were to take the road water, the sidewalk water, and then our parking lot water, and then the roof water. And it's getting a little ridiculous. So I started talking to a number of different people, and they're saying that more and more, again, where it's adequately prepared and it looks nice and things like that, that the ability for water to migrate collectively along the entire road will then minimize some of that catch basin stuff that none of us want to see a stormwater management pond that looks like the one you have out back. Trust me. So we're changed that's my opinion. I'm sorry. So we changed the slope in order to try to make it mowable, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But that's the one reason that we wanted to change that was, and this was something that just recently came up because we have a stormwater management and now we're looking at another civil engineer. And he's like, oops, sorry, you missed that one because now Frederick County changed the code. Every 20,000 needs its own little pond, or it needs to have its ability to drain naturally. So we're like, wow, okay. So I'm hoping that you might be able to see that we don't necessarily, as well as you're not going to cross 15. And it's a cul-de-sac, it's not going anywhere. So but mainly it's the stormwater that we're trying to put back in the ground as opposed to dumping it into some catch basin.
Right. Thank you. Yeah, let's deal with these individually before we go on. So what are the commissioner's thoughts on that item to not require sidewalk, curb and gutter?
I'm okay with that.
Yeah, I'm in agreement with that.
Want to make a motion?
Okay. I'll motion to allow an open section of road without the need for sidewalk, curb or gutter in accordance with town code 16.16.030.w.
We have a motion. Do I hear a second? Yep.
I'll second the
Okay.
motion.
Thank you, Terry. So we have a motion and a second to allow an open section road without the need for sidewalk, curb and gutter in accordance with town code. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? It passes unanimously.
Okay.
Excellent.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The number 2, the planning commission may grant a reduction in the number of required parking spaces in accordance with town code 1708-140C. The applicant has requested the following modification. A modification to allow 38 parking spaces instead of 42. Without the modification, they would be required to add an additional 4 parking spaces. Town staff supports this request as parking will be limited to Federal Stone staff and very limited visitors.
If you wish.
Okay, I don't know how many of you guys know about labor, but we support labor. These guys come, they work, but this is our God's greatest gifts are right here. So our guys, sadly, however, are the ones that typically don't do real well behind a wheel. They don't have driver's licenses. Many of them have cars that would rather just be underneath the shade tree that they figured they were going to fix and work on. So we do a lot of carpooling, and we probably have maybe out of our, 20 guys, we might have 6 to 8 cars in our parking lot down at 142 Water in Thermont. If anybody wants to wander by there, love to take you for a walk. But we just found that, again, in an attempt to reduce that square footage of impervious soil by reducing some of that parking lot load, then that would certainly be supportive in that. And the fact that we won't, because our production facility is only so large because all the concrete has to hydrate. We can only do so much. We can't put on 3 shifts and go crazy. So with that, that's why we're asking for this reduced parking lot area, again, to try to kind of support a smaller footprint. Thank you.
Commissioners, any thoughts? We good with this? Would someone like to make a motion then?
Okay. I'll-
Go ahead.
Motion to allow a reduction in the number of required parking spaces from 42 to 38 in accordance with Town Code 17.08.140.c.
We have a motion to hear a second.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to allow a reduction in the number of required parking spaces from 42 to 38. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? It passes unanimously. And I just want to make a comment, and it's just a personal comment. We recently had an applicant that was putting in 1 charging station for electric vehicle. And I know you just told me that your guys carpool and all that, and they might not have electric vehicles, but it is the way that things are going to be going. So you might want to consider when you come back with the site plan or whatever, or the improvement plat or whatever, at least putting in the raceways to get the wiring out to the parking lot. If nothing else, just, think about it. I'm just throwing that out there for you.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The Planning Commission may grant a reduction in the number of bicycle parking in accordance with Town Code 1708-140H. The applicant has requested the following modification: a modification to reduce the number of required bicycle parking racks from 2 to 0. Without the modification, they will be required to keep the 2 bicycle racks shown on the plan. Staff does support this request as it is highly unlikely and not recommended that bicyclists cross US 15 to visit Federal Stone.
So your employees aren't riding to work on a bike.
No, but in the art of negotiation, if you want me to put 1 out there, I'll be more than happy to put a bike rack. Hopefully you swing by and buy another place to put it. Maybe electric bikes.
Yeah. Right.
But no, it's again, I think Zach said it great. That Route 15, again, I travel from Tawnytown down to Thermont every day, and 15 is no place for a bicycle. Even though it's a bike lane and everything, it's no place. It's a super highway.
Yeah.
So we've all been sitting in traffic where somebody's sitting in T-boat.
Commissioners? Thoughts? Someone want to entertain a motion?
I'll make a motion. I'll make a motion to allow a reduction in the number of required bicycle parking from 2 to 0 in accordance with Town Code 17.08.140.h.
We have a motion. Do I hear a second?
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second to allow a reduction in the number of required bicycle parking from 2 to 0. All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? It passes unanimously.
All right, just in closing, under your seats, there's a sticker. And so whoever has that sticker wins our door prize. Because we don't want to take it home. So if you want to hear for a door, would you like it, Zach?
Mark might like it. I don't know.
It's nice, but you can keep it.
It doesn't work in my family.
No gifts, yeah.
So, do we need to make a motion to table the site plan? Because it sounds like you have withdrawn the site plan for now. Or
Whatever Zach's doing, he's driving.
Let's just table it if we can
Okay.
officially table it.
Okay. Do we hear a motion to table the site plan for this evening?
I'll make that motion that we table the site plan for Federal Stone in order for the applicant to address the conditions stated.
Okay, we have a motion. Do I get a second?
Second.
You have a motion and a second to table the site plan for Federal Stone in order for the applicant to address the numerous conditions. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? It passes unanimously. The site plan is tabled for this evening. So I don't see any other business except anything you have, Zach?
Nope, you'll be on vacation in April.
Okay,
So
that's
Yay.
good with me. Because I have all sorts of things planned for the end of it.
that's it.
So if we have no further business, would someone like to entertain a motion to adjourn for this evening?
So moved.
If there's no objection, we are adjourned. Thank you.